It's time to explore wrestling's past and potential future with your weekly dose of a segment we call What If? Only found here on the WWE Podcast.
Welcome to another What If, and this week Anthony DeMarco joins me as always to talk about Goldberg. As Goldberg, we just saw, was victorious over Bobby Lashley at the pay-per-view in Crown Jewel. I thought it was, or actually Anthony thought it was, appropriate to talk about Goldberg and his first run in WWE to see if his career would have looked any different in WWE or how it would have if he never left in 2004. As we know, he came in 2003, started with The Rock, and he ended in 2004 with his final match against Brock. But if he never left during that time, that's what we're going to focus on during this show. So Anthony, welcome. Let's get going here.
Yeah, man, really excited to talk about this because I don't know if there's a more polarizing legacy star than Goldberg right now, because I think the vast majority of fans hate him. And then there is this small segment of fans, probably the younger ones or diehard WCW fans, that still like seeing him come back. And in a lot of ways, and well, no, me fully, I hate seeing Goldberg nowadays, but there is a part of me that kind of kicks myself for that feeling, because there was once upon a time where I liked seeing Goldberg, mainly in 2003 and 2004 during his first run with the company, because I was too young to watch him with Nitro and WCW, and I was just always a diehard WWF guy. But I think in 2003, mainly his program with Triple H, where he did win the World Heavyweight Championship and was really the only guy capable of stepping into the shoes of Austin and Rock, who had since left, star power-wise. I think Goldberg had a decent first run in 2003. What do you think?
I think so, yeah. Look. They, and I'm sure of this because I've heard Jim Ross say this among others, that when they did the invasion angle, that they wish they could have brought in guys like this, because that's who the fans really wanted. And yes, we got kind of the mid to upper tier card guys like DDP, Rhino from ECW, just a couple that come to mind right now. But guys really wanted to see, or fans really wanted to see Hulk Hogan and the NWO come in. They wanted Ric Flair and Sting, and they wanted Goldberg. Like, of course they did, and unfortunately, we didn't get him until 2003. As you know, and I know, and probably most people listening know, that he came in during The Rock, right after I believe The Rock beat Stone Cold at WrestleMania 19. We got The Rock coming out, and he said, again, this is just me paraphrasing from what I remember, that he's done it all, and he said it's over. And then we get the Goldberg entrance. And, I think that they started off very well with him. The crowd was very receptive. They were kind of tipped off that Goldberg was going to be there. I remember them chanting Goldberg before it actually even happened. And I think that they did a nice job with him and The Rock, over that specific program. And then, Triple H and others. So, yeah, I think that they did a decent job at first, yes.
Well, because he comes in and beats one of the two biggest stars that the WWF had during the Attitude Era and early on Ruthless Aggression Era. And he basically kind of squashed the match in their match at Backlash 2003. And then that entire late spring and summer, he kind of just ran roughshod over the Monday Night Raw roster. I believe he had a program with Chris Jericho. And then I remember his performance in the second ever Elimination Chamber match at SummerSlam 2003. It was ultimately won by Triple H, but I remember he came in second to last, and he eliminated Jericho, Orton, and HBK in a matter of minutes. And I remember the spear that he gave Jericho through the pod. And at this time, it wasn't the baby-proof version of the chamber we're accustomed to now. But I just remember he absolutely destroyed Jericho right through the pod. I remember he kicked down the glass that Triple H was hiding in his pod in. And I don't know, I just thought that they booked Goldberg very, very well right up until his infamous clash with Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 20, a match that you were live in attendance for. So maybe you could just shed some light on just how bad his run came to an end that night.
Well, first of all, before I get to that, I got to say that the fact that Goldberg was able to break bulletproof glass with his body is absolutely impressive. Those of you that don't understand what the hell I'm saying, when Eric Bischoff introduced this, I'll never forget, for whatever reason, it just stuck in my mind that Eric Bischoff said that these pods were made of bulletproof glass. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I hope you don't want anyone to actually put that to the test, right? Like some psychopath to come in, right? And it's just obviously was never proven to be right. I mean, how many people got slammed through those pods? It was nothing more than plexiglass that was very breakable and made a lot of noise and rattled a lot. It's hardly bulletproof. But that aside, all joking aside, that match, look, Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, I know that that's not the topic of the night, but it can't be ignored that this match was a part of the run and the end of the run and left a really sour taste in not just the mouth of the fans, but also Goldberg, which is why he didn't return for how many years to WWE. And I believe it's 2016 is when he returned, so it was 12 years. So certainly a long time for him to stay away from the company. And I just think it wasn't his best work. And with both guys knowingly leaving, the crowd in New York City knew. Like, look, the internet wasn't what it is today. There was no Twitter. I believe in 2004 there wasn't even Facebook, or it was just getting going, or was then known as the Facebook. Everybody remember that, where you had to like have a school account? So maybe it wasn't even around then, but so people were still privy to the fact that Goldberg was leaving. His contract was up and he did not renew, and Brock Lesnar was on his way out going to the NFL tryouts for the Minnesota Vikings. So the only guy in there that people cared about was Austin, and being there in attendance, I can tell you it was absolutely just a complete showering of rejection. It wasn't like, even 90-10, it was 100% rejection of this match. Complete rejection of this match, and it was deserving. Like, I don't feel bad for either guy. I don't, because when you put on a performance like that at WrestleMania, you deserve to get booed out of the building. And I understand why they did it, though, because they probably didn't want either one to get hurt. Like, I'm sure they had a conversation of like, look, Brock's going to try out for football. I don't want him I don't want to get risk injury and not be able to try out. And Goldberg's like, hey, well, I'm out of here. I don't want to get injured. Let's just go through the motions. And that's exactly what they did. It was terrible. And it was a really bad way to leave Goldberg as a lasting memory for fans.
Were there ever any discussions on why Goldberg walked away? Because we know why Brock left, but did Goldberg's reason ever come to light?
I think that, looking back at interviews that he's done, Goldberg, since that time, he said that it just wasn't, again, this is me paraphrasing, but it was the environment that he was in. It did not fit what he wanted. I mean, I guess they wanted him to, they did actually offer him another deal. He turned it down. He didn't want anything to do with Vince or the company, and he felt like he was not valued at the level maybe he should have been. It was just not a good feeling. He didn't like the way he was booked. Kind of the same old thing, right? Like, or as Jim Ross says, it's usually one of the two C's, cash or creative. And I think it was a combination of both. I don't think it was really much more than that. He just didn't like the way he was being treated. The creative he didn't enjoy. And he was like, all right, screw this, I'm out. And that's all I've gotten from Goldberg. I'm sure somebody can dig up another interview he's done. He's done many with Stone Cold on his podcast. I think they went over it then. So I'm sure somebody can dig something else up, but that's what I understand to be the truth.
Well, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, the Monday Night Raw roster, especially on the babyface side of things, was pretty bare at the time. They had Shawn Michaels, but at this point they had really started kind of beating the whole angle with him and Triple H to death. And I think it was well documented that he did not want to be the world champion, or else he would have gotten in a more of an extended run than just a 1 month run with the belt from Survivor Series to Armageddon in 2002. And Edge wasn't at that level yet, and I believe he wasn't even back in the company. Actually, he had been out for a year. Randy Orton, John Cena, Batista were still in the mid card, And I think it really resulted in Chris Benoit getting his mega push, winning the Royal Rumble in 2004, and then jumping over to Monday Night Raw ahead of WrestleMania 20. So in my head, I'm saying, had they known Goldberg was sticking around, you'd have to think that he would have been in that title picture for an extended period of time beyond what he ultimately was. Because in the grand scheme of things, he held the World Heavyweight Championship from Unforgiven 2003 until Armageddon of that same year, and then really dove headfirst into the program with Brock Lesnar. I think their first encounter was actually at Armageddon 2003. Or no, sorry, it was Survivor Series '03. So in my head, I'm saying that maybe Chris Benoit doesn't get that push and win the World Heavyweight Championship at WrestleMania 20. Maybe Randy Orton isn't thrusted prematurely into that role and winning the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam and then dropping it just a month later to Triple H. And we already covered how much of a flop that babyface turn was for Randy Orton. So do you think either of those things, Benoit winning and Orton turning and winning, would have happened had Goldberg stuck around?
I still think it would have happened. And the reason is Goldberg was not well liked, I think. And again, here's what I'm going to go by the premise of answering this, is that Goldberg would have gone through his exact year as we just outlined it in reality of what happened, meaning that the match at WrestleMania was absolutely awful. Like nothing changed there. And they still had an awful match. I'm going with everything, all being equal, everything is what it is. And he just, the next night, actually shows up. He renewed his contract for however, a year, 2 years, whatever. So that's how I'm answering this. So what I want to say with that in mind is I think the fans coming off that match at WrestleMania 20, Goldberg's extended, comes out on Raw. I think he would have gotten booed as it is. I think Goldberg would have gotten booed regardless, and he would have turned heel, been forced to turn heel. I think the fans would, especially the Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania, as we all know, I think Goldberg would have continued to get booed. And that said, that turning him heel, you can't have him face Triple H. So there you still have Benoit, right? So with that in mind, I don't think Goldberg would have been the guy to face Triple H in that scenario. But that's also assuming that he stayed heel for a while. So that's my answer is I don't think it, or I do think that still would have happened, even though Goldberg left, because the fan reaction for Goldberg would have forced the hand of Vince. Randy turning babyface, we all know didn't work, but at least they tried. And at first you're like, okay, maybe this will work. We all know it didn't. But I think Goldberg right now, or at least in that time frame, the night after WrestleMania would have just dictated the remainder of his year.
Well, now that you say that, something really popped into my head because shortly after WrestleMania 20, there was a draft. And in my head, I'm thinking, would Goldberg have gone to SmackDown? Because let's look at the SmackDown landscape at that time. Brock Lesnar walked away. Eddie Guerrero was champion, and shortly thereafter, they gave Bradshaw the coronation as JBL, and then he went on a 9-month run as the WWE champion. So do you think maybe Goldberg would have gotten that run had he stuck around over on SmackDown?
Now that's a great point to bring up. I think, yes. So I was assuming he stayed on Raw, but if they didn't and they decided to make some trade or just simply draft him to SmackDown, I think that would have been much more fun for him on SmackDown, at least in terms of a more successful career, because on Raw, it's very heel heavy. You don't have Austin anymore. You don't have The Rock. They are done and gone, and you are now trying to replace them with another big star, and of which they really never succeeded in doing, at least at that level. And Goldberg on SmackDown would have been more fun. Now, yes, you had the reigning champion of JBL, but if the reaction to Goldberg was going to be negative. Like, that's the premise I'm going on. Now, whether or not I'm right, we'll never know. But I'm going on the premise that the fans would have just been like, all right, we've had a year to cheer this guy. He put up a stinker at WrestleMania on the biggest stage. And, we're clearly seeing, the respect he has for the business. At least that's how I feel like they would have perceived it. And Goldberg gets booed. He has John Cena to work with, who I believe was on SmackDown at the time. I think John Cena is an up-and-coming star. That would have been a fun rivalry between him and Goldberg on SmackDown. Now, if the fans didn't reject him, or it was just kind of like a one-time thing, then certainly JBL could have talked himself into being the heel in that rivalry with Goldberg. And if that's the case, yeah, like a babyface Goldberg against a heel JBL would have been a lot of fun. Yes.
Well, it's because I'm thinking to myself that they put JBL in that role more out of necessity, right? Like the guy was in a babyface tag team for the better part of 5 years. And then on the turn of the dime, he turns heel, reinvents himself like in a matter of weeks, and then is the WWE champion by the Great American Bash in June of 2004. So, and I think it was because they were lacking star power at that time. Like Brock left, Goldberg left. But if they had still had Goldberg at their disposal, I don't know if JBL even gets that run. And then I look at the guys that JBL had along the way. Obviously, he started with Eddie Guerrero. Then he had a bit of a program with The Undertaker. He had a couple matches with Booker T. Like Goldberg and Booker T having a program, you know, reigniting some WCW programs or matches that I'm sure that they had a few times. And I do think that he would have collided with John Cena at WrestleMania 21 because, as we know, John Cena first defeated JBL for his first ever WWE championship in 2005. So I feel like we always come back to John Cena when we talk about what if this guy would have stayed. But do you think had he stayed and had he gone to SmackDown with, again, assuming that he did get that negative reaction, and I think you're bang on with that, I think he would have 100% had to turn heel following WrestleMania 20 had he stayed around. So had he gone to SmackDown as a heel, won the WWE Championship away from Eddie Guerrero, do you think that we would have eventually gotten Goldberg versus John Cena?
Definitely, because John Cena, and people forget this, John Cena was actually a heel. He was in the early days of the Doctor of Thugonomics. People say he's never turned heel. I'm like, actually, he was a heel before he turned into, Mr. Nice Guy that was the face of the company after the Doctor of Thugonomics just took off because he was so damn good at rapping and just became super entertaining. But that said, John Cena as a babyface against Goldberg, the heel, I think that would have been really, really fun to watch. Now, that said, I think that given at the time, John Cena was, and still, through his entire career, was kind of a rigid worker, meaning he wasn't great at chain wrestling. He was more of a power guy. He didn't have a lot of finesse. He wasn't exactly Dean Malenko in the ring. I think that the match quality would have been fine, but I guess if we take it in the standard of today, which isn't fair, we would be like, man, that match sounds like it would suck from a quality perspective. But again, the definition of a 5-star match has evolved over time. So perhaps I'm just talking on deaf ears here. That said, that definitely would have happened. I mean, you've got Goldberg. You've got one of the biggest stars from WCW at your disposal. Why not put him in a match with John Cena? Now, I know, like you said, he beat John Bradshaw Layfield at WrestleMania for the championship. It was his coronation moment. And it was a huge moment for John Cena. But after that, if they were still on the same brand and after the next year's WrestleMania, you have to put them together. Of course, you could have done it before, too, and just an exhibition. But yeah, Goldberg, John Cena, it's actually kind of a shame that never happened. I mean, I guess for all intents and purposes, it's still possible today. I mean, they're both kind of still active. It's insane.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like Goldberg's slowing down anytime soon, mercifully. But another, unfortunate match we ended up getting, what was it, 2.5 years ago now, was him versus Undertaker was that in Saudi Arabia or was that in Australia? I believe it was Super Showdown in Australia, now that I think of it.
I thought it was in Saudi Arabia. I just remember everything bad being associated with Saudi Arabia. So I thought it was Saudi Arabia. I really do.
It was one of the two. So one of those two gimmick pay-per-view matches, WrestleMania Junior events that WWE puts on. And I think it's fair to say that it is one of, if not the most infamous match in the history of the company. Just a disaster top to bottom. But now thinking back on it in, let's say, the year 2004, 2005, if Goldberg was on SmackDown over as a heel, that would have just been a money rivalry for WWE, and you'd have to assume that they would have had a series of matches. And eventually, as we know, The Undertaker won the World Heavyweight Championship away from Batista in 2007 at WrestleMania 23. And Batista's another guy that would have been a great opponent for Goldberg. And they actually had a small program on Monday Night Raw in 2003 when he was feuding with Triple H in Evolution. I think they had Batista break his ankle in a steel chair, or when he jumped off the second rope and like sandwiched it. But I'll start with The Undertaker. For one, I mean, you'd have to assume it was better than their match in Saudi Arabia or Super Showdown, whichever one it was. And do you think that they would have collided at a WrestleMania? Like, do you think it would have been that big of a match back then?
I think it would have been, yes, it would have been an absolute like top headlining main event, because you have two guys now 20 years, nearly, I say 15 years younger than they are today, who are much more capable. Taker was in his absolute prime, and Goldberg, while he never had exactly the widest array of movesets, could have at least executed his end satisfactorily. We all know this. He's got basically spear, jackhammer, maybe a clothesline or punch thrown in here or there. But back at that time, I think he would have been able to work with a much more limber Undertaker, and they would have made the match work in a much safer and watchable way. Now, it wouldn't have it wouldn't have been Kurt Angle HBK by any stretch. I mean, I don't care what time frame you put them in or what age they are. That's just not the style of match it would have been. But it should have been, to me, back at that time, they could have easily, do I dare say headline? Probably not headline, but a semi-main of Undertaker versus Goldberg. It could be the Streak versus the Streak. Now, I understand Goldberg's, streak was broken at 173-0 or whatever. But they could have pulled on that lineage about Goldberg saying, if you want to know anything about streaks, I'm the guy to talk to, right? Like they could have gone on some nice footage there, pulling from WCW, and Undertaker had his WrestleMania streak intact at the time. And I think it would have been an okay match, one that we go, all right, that was a fun little match, probably very slow paced, and that's fine. And I think, yes, if Goldberg was around, at least maybe like a 2 or 3 year contract, they could have pulled that off.
And I guess now that we talk about how long you would have been around, like, do you think we would still be seeing Goldberg nowadays had he had a good run post 2004? Like, I would assume that he would have wrapped up his career sometime around 2008, 2009. And look, this guy is still in incredible shape. Like, I would argue that of all the legacy stars, no superstar is better conditioned than Goldberg. Like, the guy looks like he didn't age aside from his beard turning white. But in my head, and from what I've heard from him, it's because he wanted his family to see him do it in the ring. Mercifully, we're still saying this 5 years later since his initial return into 2016. But do you think we would still see him as often as we do nowadays? And I guess the second part to that question would be, do you think everyone would resent him as much as everyone does nowadays had he had a prolonged run in WWE the first time around?
So, couple part question there. Do I think if Goldberg stuck around in our fantasy scenario, say for a few more years, 4 years, and actually had a decent showing for himself, that decent showing would have had to have been, meaning he would have had to learn a little bit more maneuver, spend some time in OVW or whatever training they had at the time, because NXT wasn't a thing, but go back to the basics. To me, Goldberg would have only survived those years if he learned how to actually perform at a level that most of his competitors were, and not just be such a one-dimensional guy. If he was just that spear jackhammer guy throughout those, say, again, fantasy 3-year extension, then I think the fans would have outright rejected him, and he would have been a heel the entire time. I really believe that, because the fans would have gotten real sick of that real quick. I don't honestly understand the fans today, why they're still cheering that. I don't get it. I don't get it. Is it just the entrance, the nostalgia that people cheer for? But if he was to, stick around for those 3 years, I think that he still would be coming back today in a semi-regular way, in the way that Brock Lesnar comes back. I really do believe that. If his extension went right. If his extension was disastrous, then I think he probably would have stayed away, because he would have been like, all right, I don't have any unfinished business here. I'm good. But like you said, would it have motivated him based on his son and his family wanting to see him wrestle? Maybe that still would have been a factor, where he's like, all right, well, I know I had a terrible run. I still want my family to see me live. Maybe the fans have forgotten, or there's a new generation of fans. So maybe he still comes back in 2016, which I still think is very possible. And that's a long time. So even if he left, say, in 2007 and he comes back in 2016, that's nearly 10 years. That's a long time in wrestling. I mean, like 2 weeks seems like a long time in wrestling with so much happening. So I do believe he still would have come back. His family, as he said many, many, many times, it was his primary motivator. So yeah, even if he had the extension, I believe he would have been back because of his family. Yes.
And when I look back on Goldberg now, I do think that, especially from a WCW perspective, he was one of the biggest stars that they ever produced. And I think he was like their only like homegrown megastar. I guess you could kind of make the argument that Booker T was that, but I don't think he ever got to the level that Goldberg did. And even a guy like Sting, he was kind of brought up through the NWA system. And, Ric Flair, same for him. Then all the NWO guys came from the WWF. So Goldberg was kind of like, in his own way, he kind of personified WCW. I know most people think of Sting, and rightfully so, but Goldberg was that true, like, bred guy from WCW. And I think in a lot of ways, he's one of the most historic wrestlers and characters in the history of the wrestling and sports entertainment business. And I think it is kind of sad how many people, myself included, reject him and want nothing to do with him nowadays. So, like, I guess I'm trying to figure out a way, and the reason I thought about this earlier today after watching this Crown Jewel last week was, like, I'm trying to figure out a way in my head, like, how this could have been avoided, how this rejection of one of the more storied characters in the history of the business got to this point. And I mean, for you, do you think them rejecting Goldberg was just inevitable because of how one-dimensional his character was? Or do you think it really just came down to him having a subpar run the first time around with WWE, and then WWE just really badly booking him this time around?
So I'm going to pretend that the first run didn't happen, and I'm going to pretend that the fans today don't remember his run before. Or if they do, they look at it through rose-colored glasses and go, yeah, that match at the end wasn't great, but he's still a megastar that came into WWE. So I'm trying to make that minimize the previous run because it was so long ago. I think the biggest reason that the fans should start to, and maybe they will, reject him on on face value coming in, is that he is just comes in every time and feels as if he's entitled to a championship match. There's no build. There's no, hey, I got to earn it like everyone else here. He comes in and just challenges the champion and is awarded a championship match. To me, that's the biggest problem I have, is that he comes out and it's just, boom, he's in a championship match. That's not how it should work at all. Now, I know Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar does that. Brock Lesnar, number one, can go in the ring. Like, he is a all-American athlete. He's got a diverse move set. He's got a much longer legacy in WWE than Goldberg does. So that analogy doesn't work for me. But Goldberg comes in and just confronts Brock Lesnar. He confronted Drew McIntyre, and he just awarded championship matches. To me, that's the number one. Number two is his moveset and quality of matches that really have been kind of have stunk, especially the last few. Outside of outside of this one, I got to say, the one with Bobby Lashley at the Crown Jewel was his best in a long time, and they did a nice job of covering up his weaknesses. I'll give them that. But prior to that, the Undertaker match, I mean, he even had a match with Dolph Ziggler. Like, they've all been just so predictable. Under 3 minutes, you know what you're going to get. It's spear, jackhammer, spear, jackhammer, spear, jackhammer, rinse and repeat. And so it's really just a few things. And the biggest, though, is that he's just an entitled Hall of Famer that he comes across as.
It's true, and I think the worst one for me, aside from the Undertaker one, and I really thought he was just going to walk away when that happened, and then I know that he wanted, the mulligan, and I think that's what led to his match with Dolph Ziggler, but for me, it was when he came back against Drew McIntyre last January for his match at the Royal Rumble, and it was on Legends Night that he just walked out, and then just like, based on nothing, just claimed that Drew McIntyre had no respect for the legends and then just challenged him for the match. And I thought when he initially came back, they did an all right job. Like, I liked his match against Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series where he beat him in, 90 seconds or whatever. And then him even winning the championship against Kevin Owens. Like, that was, I understood it because it was setting up for the historic title reign that Brock would have from 2017 to the summer of 2018. So I thought it was passable, but everything after WrestleMania 33 for me has just been totally unnecessary. And especially that match with The Undertaker. When he did that match with The Undertaker, which I would say was 99% his fault, unless I'm misremembering something, I think that everything he's done since then has just been, I've had those glasses on. And then when he beat the Fiend, Bray Wyatt, oh my God, that was...
I was just going to bring that up. Yep.
He killed that character. He killed the Fiend's character. And he beat him with a suplex in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, a suplex,
and I don't even,
yeah.
And, well, now that you're going to bring it up, how did they even book that match? Like, I don't even know how it came to fruition.
I forget how it happened. I really try to pretend that it didn't happen. It was. I'd have to go back and look at the storyline, how it all panned out. I don't remember. It's not like Goldberg went through a tournament to earn the number one contendership. That's for damn sure. He just probably showed up, and whoever was champion at the time, Goldberg's like, yeah, I want that guy. I'm sure that's how it probably happened, because that's how he's awarded championship matches, which again causes resentment. But you're right about this whole Fiend thing. That's another massive strike against the Fiend, or against Goldberg in my mind. And I know Goldberg had nothing to really do with it, but he's the face of that event, is him beating a guy that he had no business beating. And like you said, it was a suplex. It wasn't even a jackhammer. And there's been a lot of speculation that Bray Wyatt did that on purpose and didn't really hold himself up like he should have, because he knew that, obviously he knew the outcome of the match and wanted to put his own spin or his opinion about the match without putting his opinion about the match in there, where he could plausibly deny, well, I don't know, it's just a miscommunication, Vince. I tried my best to get up there. Like, if it's true, and I kind of tend to believe it's true, that he wasn't able to, or he did do that on purpose. I don't know. I tend to believe it because conspiracy theories are more fun to believe than not, even if it's not plausible. But I think it is. And that is absolutely one of the other things about Goldberg, the character that I resent. And I don't know why we're cheering for him every time he comes back. I don't get it.
And what made it worse was that was not even a year after the disaster with The Undertaker. That's the other thing about this, is that the thing with The Undertaker, I believe, happened in May of 2019, if I'm not mistaken. And then he had the mulligan with Dolph Ziggler at SummerSlam, which I'm just like, okay, fine. Like, I wouldn't want to go out looking like a big idiot either by spearing yourself headfirst into the post. So, like, fine, whatever. But then for him to come back and just take all the wind out of the sails of arguably the hottest character that WWE had at that time, because The Fiend was not even a year old at that point. And then you win the championship, and then you're booking for him versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, and not this Roman Reigns, the old Roman Reigns, a match that nobody wanted to see. And I guess the only good thing that came out of that is that it gave Braun Strowman like his one and only very big legitimate victory, I would say. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I think Braun Strowman lost every big time one-on-one match, especially for when a championship was involved. So, I mean, I guess that was a bit of a silver lining, is that Goldberg was able to put over Braun Strowman and give him some legitimacy to his run with the company before he was ultimately released earlier this year. But I mean, everything since that disaster against The Undertaker in Saudi Arabia, to me, has just been a stain on Goldberg's legacy. And I mean, I guess I'll throw it to you, like that first win of the Universal Championship when he beat Kevin Owens, was that just as bad for you, or was that one like passable in your opinion?
Well, at the time, I still was not a fan of Goldberg coming in and just getting awarded a championship match. I don't like that no matter who it is. I don't like it. Even to some degree, it annoys me with Brock to a lesser degree. But to me, there's got to be some kind of process that happens or some kind of logical explanation other than just, yeah, I'm here because I'm a big name and give me your championship. You know, I don't like that, babyface or not. But that said, the whole Kevin Owens conundrum, I didn't hate it at the time. I was a little bit like, all right, I guess this is the direction they're going with Goldberg. They're going to have a very quick match. They're going to just give him the championship, and that's that, But I know that before that, I'm looking at a list of his matches right now because I was very curious about how each match went down and the time of each match and things. So, yeah, the whole Kevin Owens thing happened. Beyond that, the Ziggler match was 1:50. The Braun Strowman match at the WrestleMania 36 was 2:13. The Super Showdown match against The Fiend was just under 3 minutes. The Drew McIntyre match at the Royal Rumble this year was 2.5 minutes. The length of his matches to me, and the Kevin Owens one specifically, which was 22 seconds at Fastlane in 2017, 22 seconds. It's clearly a mask that they put on to cover the weaknesses of Goldberg, which are very apparent of, hey, I don't have any other moves other than 2. So can you guys really just shorten the length of the match? It's essentially what this is. Otherwise, everyone would be going for their finishes right at the beginning of the match, So I don't know. The Goldberg thing with Kevin Owens, though, that set the tone for me because that was in 2017. Everything else I just talked about was 2018, 2019, and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Kevin Owens, I could kind of live with because he had just defeated Brock Lesnar, who was like seemingly unbeatable at that point in time. And then then he eliminated Brock from the Rumble that year as well. So I was kind of able to get myself there. I wasn't thrilled with it, but I understood what they were going for, and it was ultimately to put the championship back on Brock at WrestleMania so Brock could finally get his somewhat of revenge on Goldberg. So I was able to get by with that, but for me, it was just everything. It was that Undertaker match, like that to me, and it was also, I'm not going to put all the blame on Goldberg. I think there's a bit on The Undertaker because I think The Undertaker overstayed his welcome as well, and he just wasn't looking as good at that point, but staying on track with Goldberg, for me, everything post that Taker match has just been tough to stomach. And I'm with you, man. I don't know how people, even like creative and even Goldberg himself, like he must know that so many people just groan at the sound of his entrance music. And like, I don't know. I hope it ends soon, but I get the feeling that we're going to see him at least 1 or 2 more times, and probably including this WrestleMania as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this is not over. I think that, like, you're right. This perhaps the final match, the real final match we get with Goldberg is at WrestleMania, and I honestly don't have enough urge or enough determination to even dig into, oh wow, who could be Goldberg's final opponent? Honestly, I don't care. Like I just don't care. I don't care enough to use my brain power to try to figure that out because I just don't care. And it's just, again, no disrespect against the guy. It's just his character doesn't fit in today's world as a babyface. Now, again, if you're going to make him a heel, which I've advocated for a couple of years now, I'm all for it. The story's right there. He comes in as a titled Hall of Famer. He's a guy that doesn't have a big moveset. Fans want large movesets and great matches today. It's a different world than it was back in, the mid 2000s early to mid 2000s when he left. So that also works against him. He's limited in promos. That works against him. But it all works for him if he's a heel. I don't know why they haven't just turned Goldberg heel for a couple of matches. It helps get over the up and coming baby faces, whoever they may be right now. I mean, you could even have Goldberg beat him. I know they had him, or McIntyre beat him. I know they already had a match, but my point is he's much better suited to be a heel, given all those attributes. There's certainly something to be said there. And he could say, do you guys know who the hell I am? I was the face of WCW, and you guys are going to treat me like there's just so much there. And they won't do it. They feel as if Goldberg still has a lot of juice to squeeze out of the babyface role. I don't think that's the case. And as I look at the number of matches, because I was curious, since he returned in 2016 at Survivor Series, he's had 11 matches in WWE since that time. So 11 matches in what, 5 years?
Oh god, yeah. 11 matches.
Yeah, 11. I'm seeing it in front of my face. So 11 matches since Survivor Series of 5 years ago. So it's about 2 matches a year.
And he's lost what, 3 of those?
He's lost, let's see. So he won the Goldberg match at the first Survivor Series. The second was the Royal Rumble, so I guess that kind of counts, although he didn't win it, so he lost there. No, I'm not going to count that because I'm talking one-on-one matches. Goldberg won against Kevin Owens. Brock beat him at WrestleMania 33. Undertaker beat him at Super Showdown in 19.
Okay, so it was Super Showdown.
It was Super Showdown in 2019, yeah, in the King Abdullah Sports City Stadium in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Okay, but then what was I thinking of? Because they did did they not do a Super Showdown as well in Australia?
Yeah, they did. Yep.
I get so sidetracked with all these like WrestleMania Junior shows that they do overseas,
because they just, to me, like, they don't. I'm sorry, but like, especially I think Canada and the United States are like their home base for fans. I know there's a lot of UK people that listen to this show, and like I'm like, cool. Like I first of all, thank you for the fans that are listening from the UK and beyond. But like, they aren't the home base for WWE. And when they do these extra little shows that were supposed to feel like are really part of the storyline, it to me is like watching Insurrection back in the day, where it's like a pay-per-view you hear about that happened, but it doesn't have any relevance to the storyline going on now. I know Crown Jewel's not that way now. Obviously, it does still have relevance to the storyline, but it still feels like, since it's in a totally different country, sometimes the reactions are different from the fans. It just doesn't feel like a real traditional pay-per-view that WWE puts on. I don't know. Among a lot of other stuff people don't like about Saudi Arabia, as far as, political stuff, governmental stuff, and none of that helps either. So.
Yeah, and all the matches always seem to come out of left field. Like, I believe at that same pay-per-view, they had like Orton versus Triple H randomly, and then
John
they had
Cena, yeah.
Yeah, and then they had like Triple H versus Undertaker, like the last time ever. I'm just like, no, I've seen this 52 times. And then it led to the Brothers of Destruction versus D-Generation X. And like, it's just always matches that would have been fun 15 years ago. And then isn't that when Kane's mask came off in the middle of the match?
Oh, God. If you want another disaster of a match, there's been so many it's hilarious and bad things that have happened in Saudi Arabia at these pay-per-views. Like obviously we just talked about Taker Goldberg, the return of Shawn Michaels that we're going to pretend didn't happen, that he came out of retirement for Saudi Arabian money and was bald and did not put on a good performance. And it was distracting. Like, Shawn Michaels does not belong without hair. I don't care how receding his hairline is. Go Hulk Hogan if you have to. I don't care. Michaels without hair is just the worst. And yes, Kane's mask came off. Triple H ended up tearing his pec within like the first few minutes. Michaels was not good. He missed a couple of moonsaults. Kane, it was a total disaster. And since then, Triple H has even commented on how terrible that match. Like, everyone knows. Yeah, that is one of the other things. And the funniest thing that ever came from Saudi Arabia, I'll say this, is Titus World Slide at the Greatest Royal Rumble. One of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. Was Titus World Slide.
And that was the first ever Saudi Arabia event, if I'm not mistaken.
So. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. It's still funny to this day. I mean, just watching it and hearing Corey Graves like crying about how funny it was. It made it that much better. It never gets old. It's a great GIF. I'll say that.
So technically, Braun Strowman is still the reigning champion because he got a title for that.
Yeah, that is true. Braun Strowman. So they'll have to bring him back. And yeah, I mean, so that 40-man Royal Rumble. It's basically like getting a ribbon as a participation award, right? I mean, it's like the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. You know, that trophy that means like seriously nothing. Like, so yeah.
I can't believe they even signed that deal with Saudi Arabia. Like, I know it's money, and I know I can't even remember how many millions and millions of dollars that they're being paid, but it just never felt right to me. I don't know why.
No, it doesn't. And I think, if I'm correct, we are nearing the end of their pay-per-view deal. At least when I say nearing, I think it's only a year or 2 years left. I'd have to double check on that. I'm sure it's Googleable. But that's the last time I checked. There was like a 5 or 6 year deal that they did with them, and we are at the back end of it. So those of us that aren't excited about Saudi Arabia, perhaps they don't re-up this deal. I still have my doubts that they may redo it, may re-up it, and may actually continue this for the foreseeable future. The reason is that the money's great, number one. Number two, they are trying to penetrate into a world market that is in Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of untapped fans that they perceive there that they could bring into the product and help ratings and help merchandise and help everything. So while we don't like it here in the States, a lot of people don't like it. If you're a for-profit organization and Vince is not bothered by everything that Saudi Arabia has done and stands for and still, has been involved in the past, well, then, we may not ever see the end of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. But they've been trying to tackle like the Middle East for like what seems to be like 5+ years now. Like, wasn't that the main reason why Jinder Mahal won the WWE Championship?
Yep. That one of the biggest reasons. They won't say that. They'll never say that. But yes.
You know what? Like, well, I don't want to open that can of worms of Jinder Mahal, but I will just say that I quit watching SmackDown that summer. That's where I'll leave it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a lot of people were down on that. We'll have to talk about that sometime. Jinder Mahal's, I believe it was like a 6-month run. It was pretty significant. It was a pretty significant run. Yeah, it wasn't like it wasn't a month or two. It was like 6 months, I think, beating Randy Orton and yeah. So, yep. Well, we'll talk about that another time for sure. But again, Goldberg. As I wrap things up here, I want to say that I don't think his career would have been looked at too much differently, even with a multi-year extension. He still, I think, would be doing what he is today, coming back on a very part-time basis. 2 matches a year seems to be the formula right now. I think he would still be doing that. But at the same time, maybe the fans wouldn't be so, or at least fans like you and I wouldn't be so quick to say, man, I'm so sick of this. Can we please move on from Goldberg instead of just getting this constant every 6 months Goldberg interjects himself into a main event match because he's Goldberg.
Yeah, I think we would have gotten more of the same reaction. Well, we would have given more of the same reaction as to like when, let's say, Triple H comes back, or even like when Brock comes back. I think it would have been very similar. But I think you hit the nail on the head is that the one thing that works against Goldberg is that even had he stuck around, is that he's never been a heel, and I feel like his pride kind of plays into it, him not wanting to be a heel. But another thing is that he really can't work more than spear, jackhammer, and a clothesline here and there, or a shoulder tackle, as opposed to Brock, or contrary to much belief, who is a very good worker. So, I mean, Goldberg, I think it would have helped him a bit. He wouldn't have seemed as entitled and coming out of left field had he stuck around for, let's say, 3 or 4 extra years beyond 2004. But I do think that he would have been soured on eventually, by me at least.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think at some point it's only natural for every star to go through this where the fans get tired of you. They just get tired of seeing you in the same scenarios, or if your character doesn't evolve, fans are like, all right, I've seen this act. I know what this is about. Can you add something, or are you just going to turn heel? Because what you're doing right now is it's like chewing the same piece of gum. Like, it's like, all right, I'm done with this. I want a new piece of gum. And it's the same thing here with Goldberg, and why the fans haven't turned on him, I will just don't get it. I don't get it. The best hope I had was at SummerSlam when he had that just god awful match, no fault of Bobby's and really no fault of Goldberg's to some extent. That was the way the match was booked to be. So I was hopeful that at that point I was like, all right, cool. But WWE knew they had a bit of a buffer between SummerSlam and Crown Jewel, and they weren't going to be in the same country. So they had a nice little respite there of, it wasn't like he immediately came to SmackDown the next night. If they did, I think the fans would have continued to boo him. They've just gotten lucky with his schedule that time is seemingly their best friend, but I don't know why they won't even explore this. It's, to me, if Goldberg isn't good on the mic or whatever, like, then he doesn't have to be as a heel. That's part of why the fans don't like him. And it's everything right there for him. It's easier to be a heel, I think, than it is to be a beloved babyface. It's so much easier. Sure. So yeah, I don't get it.
I think one of the hardest things to do in WWE, and ask Roman Reigns, is to get over as a babyface. And I think that's the hardest thing that WWE has had in the last number of years. I think the most organic one was probably, let's say in the last 5 years or so, was probably Dean Ambrose, honestly. What about you?
Yeah, Dean Ambrose, that's actually a pretty good choice, I think. Dean Ambrose is probably that guy. Man, I'm trying to think of another one.
AJ.
Yeah, AJ. AJ's a good one too. I don't know, man. Here's the thing. Do you think they'll ever do it, or you think he's just going to go out as a baby face and he's going to call it a career?
I think he's just going to go out as a babyface because at this point, I do feel that Goldberg has a bit of an ego. And, rightfully so in a lot of respects. Like, he's one of the most recognizable names in professional wrestling history. He's jacked as all hell at the age of, 57 or however old he is right now. He looks like he's still, in better shape than most guys my age in their late 20s. So, but I do think there is a part of Goldberg that he kind of likes to dictate what happens. And I think one of it is playing Superman. I think Goldberg kind of likes him being portrayed as this badass that could come in and even the way he squared up to Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, that visual they gave of the camera up the ramp, and he puts his fists up and then he starts punching and I just get the sense from Goldberg, and obviously I can't say this for certain, I've never spoken to him obviously, but I get the sense that he really likes to play Superman, and I think he likes to do that in front of his wife and in front of his son. And I don't know. I think that if I wouldn't be surprised if they had already pitched it to him to turn heel, and he said, no, I want to come back as a babyface. I want to come back and win WWE championships and kill people and do all this stuff. Do you not get the sense that there's a bit of ego at play as well with Goldberg here?
Look, ego at this level, anybody that tells you they don't have an ego at his level, I mean, they're just lying to your face. Yeah, you have it. It's just a matter of how well do you hide that you have it. But honestly, if Goldberg is, if that's the argument that's what I want to do, I would say, well, dude, you've had 5 years to do it. You've been doing this for 5 years. You've had your time to have those moments with your kids in the ring or play Superman on TV for your kids. Well, I'd also say to him, listen, your kid is what, 15, 16, 17 years old? Does he still really believe my daddy is Superman? No, he's grown up. I mean, he's getting in the ring with stars and getting his ass kicked, but deservedly so by Bobby Lashley. I still support that 100%. But I just, to me, it's not about I've got, a 2 and 3 year old and they want to see good old daddy in the ring beating up people. To me, this is a missed opportunity if we don't explore what the hell a heel Goldberg looks like. And for that matter, John Cena, although that's another topic. But it just, I don't know. It's a tired formula for Goldberg that is, again, I blame the fans as much as I blame creative, because they continue to support and validate WWE's decision by cheering every time and chanting Goldberg, and he spears people and people go, yay. I just, it's unfortunate. It's like a Pavlovian response to Goldberg's entrance. I don't understand why they continue to cheer him. So until the people turn on him, you're right. I think they're going to continue to just trudge out the good old 55-year-old machine Goldberg to spear and jackhammer people.
Yeah, 100%. And look, I have friends that like were big wrestling fans 20 years ago, and then they'll text me and be like, "Yo, Goldberg's wrestling? You want to watch him?" I'm just like, no, not at all. Yeah. I'm gonna actively try and miss this event, actually. But so like you're absolutely right, is that there's still a segment of wrestling fans or past wrestling fans that will just see Goldberg and remember him from Starrcade 23 years ago and jump all over it. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's money, and I get it. But from an in-ring perspective and a character perspective, like, oh, he's just the worst now. That's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, he is. He is. And again, I'll just say this, and then we can close it out. But I think that the name value is what is bringing in friends that you just gave an example of, and friends that I have, and other people that, you know, they may not hear about wrestling or talk about wrestling with you until they hear the massive names. Oh my God, wait, I heard Stone Cold's coming back, or I heard The Rock. Like, unless it's those mega names, and Goldberg, in his defense, for a lot of people, is in that conversation of, you know, massive name brand value. Those are the times you only hear from your friends, is, you know, because that's all they care about are those mega Attitude Era / you know, Ruthless Aggression Era stars. And, you know, to me, that is what Vince is counting on when Goldberg is signed for the millions of dollars is, hey, yeah, he may not put on the greatest matches, but his name value is really what we're signing here. That is why we're giving him so many zeros, is not because he puts on great matches, but because he's got star power. That's it. That's really it, because you can't tell me it's his promos. You can't tell me it's his in-ring. He's really being signed for his past performance in WCW. That's essentially why he's still getting so much money. He's still really getting paid for 1998, 1999, and 2000. That's really how he's still getting money. And that's what brings people into today's product. People remember that. And Vince is counting on bringing in fans that maybe have left, and they hear Goldberg's back and he's having a match with so-and-so. So they tune in, maybe purchase the network for a month or two, or actually outright buy the pay-per-view, which you can still do inexplicably, or, you know, for whatever reason, or buy merchandise, you know. So that's what they're counting on for a return on their investment for all the money they invest in Goldberg.
Well, just to give you just a bit of an example, like my dad heard that Goldberg was back. He's just like, oh, like, yep. Goldberg. And my dad's 58 years old. So just to give you an example, like, not to say that my dad's going to run and watch wrestling, like he never will be caught dead watching it now. But like, just to give you an example of someone who will at least like poke their head out of of their room, just be like, oh, Goldberg's back. Mm-hmm. But because he does fall in the same bracket as like, I mean, like, for a lot of people, I guess he falls in that same tier as Austin, as Rock, as Triple H, you know. And as far as WCW guys go, I mean, okay, I know Sting is still kicking around in AEW, but I mean, at this point, it's more of a managerial role. And to be honest, I find it more tragic than anything. But I mean, he's the only guy from WCW that really still is kind of relevant, unless I'm missing somebody.
I mean, no. And I'd actually like to see WWE and all promotions move away from the stars of yesteryear to build their promotions, at least in the long term. Like, I understand the need to bring in Goldberg, or the temptation to bring in Goldberg and other stars. And, you know, AEW right now, that's how they're building their company. Like, AEW right now is building their brand and their brand awareness, since they're still a relatively new company, only 2 years old, by bringing in those massive stars of yesteryear, like Sting, like Jericho, like Moxley, you know, obviously CM Punk, Daniel Bryan. But those guys are still not the future of the company. They have way many more days behind them than they do in front of them. But they're good for the short term of getting attention to the product for people that may have left or want to see what this company's all about. And it at least sends the message to the consumer, hey, we're serious about this. We were investing a lot of money. You know, come see these guys still perform. And most of them can still perform just fine. And still, in Daniel Bryan's case and CM Punk's case, really well. But the point is that bringing in Attitude Era stars, bringing in yesteryear stars, can only get you so far if all you do is invest in their progress rather than investing in the stars of tomorrow's progress. So I don't know. I don't know where the hell I was going with that, but it's legacy stars.
No, I feel you. And, like, I'm not going to complain if they bring back, let's say, The Rock to go up against Roman Reigns or matches like that. Like, I still do think that there's a place for legacy stars. I still think that we haven't seen the last of Triple H or maybe Shane McMahon, although I've heard that he's no longer under contract with them as a talent anymore. But, I mean, it's just, like, I guess The Rock would be a bit of an exception because of the whole bloodline storyline and his family ties with Roman Reigns. But, like, when Triple H comes back now, like, it's been a long time since we saw. Well, I mean, I say that, but he was main eventing WrestleMania at WrestleMania 32, right? So as the WWE champion. So, I mean, I guess, like, I like legacy stars if they're placed in the right, I guess, situation. Like, if it's a legacy star versus legacy star, like if you had brought back, or like what we've talked about all the time, like Triple H versus Shane McMahon, something like that. But, or like, even if it's just an undercard match. But Goldberg, it seems like every time he comes back, it's almost to stop a guy who's on the rise, let's say like Bobby Lashley, right in his tracks, or go up against Drew McIntyre. It just seems like he's always at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what it seems like with Goldberg.
Yeah, that's true. It does. And I think, like, as we said a few minutes ago, we've got probably a few more of those that we have to endure. And it's not like he's going to suddenly pull out, a 450 splash out of his repertoire. It's not going to happen. Like, Goldberg is who he is. We know what kind of match we're going to get. And hopefully it's going to be maybe at this year's WrestleMania in Dallas, maybe his final match, and it's announced as such. Because I'll be interested in that. And he has had a hell of a career. Really a guy that I don't believe, been a guy that has had more of a limited moveset and been the right guy in the right place at the right time than Goldberg. I mean, really his intensity and his look are what carried him through his stardom. Without that, I mean, he is just another body that can do the very basics of wrestling, which is a dime a dozen. So, all right, let's close this out, because this is just a very deep conversation, great conversation. But I do want to let everyone know. I'll announce this now, because we do know, and now we're being held to it, that next week we are going to be talking about Kane. We're going to be talking about what if Kane didn't take off his mask. In what year did he take it off? Was it 2003?
2003.
2003. Yeah. So what would his career would have looked like? Who his opponents would have been? What his legacy would be like? All that stuff. And one of the most underrated stars of all time, in my estimation, is Kane. One of my favorites of all time, that I don't think gets the credit that sometimes he deserves. So I'm looking forward to that. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, man. Kane, one of the more underappreciated characters of all time. And to be honest, I think a lot of The Undertaker's legacy should be credited to Kane. And I think they talked about that on either The Mortician or The Last Ride, one of those series. Like, I don't know. I think that Kane added a much-needed wrinkle into The Undertaker's character in 1997, 1998. And as we talked about before we started recording here, I mean, is there a character that I guess suffered the most from being around in the Attitude Era than a guy like Kane?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we'll answer that next week. How about that for a hook? Yeah. So all right. Well, listen, great conversation I did not think we would be talking this long about Goldberg. Let me say, I was like, this will probably be a good 30 minutes. We're done. But there's really a lot to dive into with Goldberg. And I think we did a heck of a job, really deep diving into his career and his shortcomings and what we hope to see from him in the future.
Yeah, aka nothing.
yeah, nothing. We're more of the same, right? Like it's more of the same. Like you go to a fast food, like you go to McDonald's, you know exactly what you're gonna get. It's never a surprise. So
exactly.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna get. So we're equating Goldberg to a McDonald's drive-through. How about that to end the show? But all right, well, it's always great talking to you. And before you go, what is your social media if anyone wants to follow you? Of course, don't forget also listen to Anthony on the Rivalry Show on Fridays.
Yeah, so as always, you can get me on Twitter at AdaMarco25, and Coincidentally enough, rivalries this past week was Goldberg versus The Rock. So if you want more Goldberg content, be sure to check that out.
Yeah, if what we gave you now is whetting your appetite for more Goldberg, we've got it covered for you. So I think I'm about Goldberged out. I would like to not say the word Goldberg for quite some time unless WWE forces me to. So, all right. Well, listen, great conversation and looking forward to next week's topic about Kane.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it.
All right. Have a good night.
Take care, man.
Bye.